We're excited to be joined by Jason Paul, a candidate for the DNC chair, an attorney, activist, and political strategist. Now, before we jump into the crux of the interview, kind of as a chance to give you a chance to introduce yourself, I'd like to start with the question: what do you think makes you the right person to move the party forward, whether it be experience, knowledge, whatever it may be?
Perfect. So I think the thing that makes me the right person to lead the party forward is that I'm coming to this with a series of very big ideas, starting from first, those text messages that we all get are a cancer on our, not just like, oh, they're annoying, but they become so annoying that they're grist for the mill of tuning out. And we can't have people tuning out. But when you do that, I think today members of Congress are telling me that June 3rd, they have their December 31st fundraising deadline. But I'm sorry, the next time they're running for election is in 20 months. They don't really need the money this instant.
Yeah.
And so that whole process of doing that makes it really hard. How you go about logistically fix it, that's a more granular, I don't think your listeners, are super excited about understanding the alphabet soup of there's a DNC and a DCCC and a DSCC and an DLCC. And, basically to them, it's all just Democrats. And if all of those organizations only email you once, but you have 10 emails, the Democrats emailed you 10 times, not those people do that. So another big thing that I want to do is, where possible, move from sort of that model of we're at you all the time with urgency to, look, you give us $10 a month. It's your Netflix subscription to democracy. We don't bother you. And not only do we not bother you as much, it's impossible to guarantee non-bother because of, again, all the different entities involved, but we bother you way less. But also we start to provide things in local communities that you want. One of the major things, sort of a base level thing that I want is we need 10,000 organizers, one for every county in this country, and then one for an additional 50,000 population. Can't have the same number of organizers for, a rural county in Oregon as Los Angeles County. That doesn't make any sense. But you need that sort of floor level. That person is a Democrat who you can, if you have any questions, not just how do I vote for you and how do I give you money, but how do I access the benefits of my government benefits? How do I do this? How do I do that? Someone who is the party in a way that can be helpful. And then what you really want to do is plug them in with sort of 1 million people who are Democrats, who are just your neighbor and friend, who are responsible for about 200 voters apiece. The math works out. They're about, Harris got about 75 million votes. I think realistically, there are about 200 million people who could, in theory, vote for us. Some of them, there's some MAGA people who nothing we can do. I'm not saying you just keep not, if someone tells you to get off their lawn at some point, you don't be like, but I really want to be on your lawn.
Yeah.
No, at some point, people, but in that way, if you have those people, that's about, it's around 2% of the people, who so I said, I'm doing the math a little bit wrong in my head. Sorry about that. It's in the 5 or 6% range of people who cared enough to have a credit card saved on ActBlue. That's 15 million people. There are probably another 5 million who don't give but vote in low turnout primaries. It's very important that you don't only exist to the party if you give the money, but you can do sort of voting in those primaries is free, but also says, I'm here, I count, I want to be counted. If you have 20 million who want to be involved, then, 1 in, 5% of them are then talking to their friends and neighbors. That is how we build a party that is talking to people at a human level all the time. Because one of the things I see a lot on a lot of my opponents were a lot of the other candidates in this race. I don't consider anyone an opponent. A lot of the candidates in this race, they're talking about we need to get into the alternative news podcast like this space. And I completely agree that this is the way a lot of people get information. And I think that bringing in, rather than setting up people where their number one job is building an audience and then their second job is getting the content right, trying to say, okay, look, we have all these people who want content. If you have you have no audience, then nobody wants you. But if you have your level of audience, people like you, want to listen to you, but sort of you're going to spend a huge amount of time on audience building. I don't want you to have to spend as much time on audience building. I would like it if you could spend time on your content, and then we put you in front of the audiences that already we think are likely to like you. So I believe in sort of the podcast model as a thing that we should also be thinking about funding, but we're not going to podcast our way. One of the things is, oh, the Republicans have podcasts and we don't have as many podcasts and we need more podcasts. And if we just get but it's always sort of chasing the new technology. And to my mind, you're never going to succeed at better noise than the Republicans, because Republicans are Republicans' basic core argument a lot of the time is inherently selfishness. And the Democrats' argument is inherently communitarian. And you're not gonna, you can't outshout selfish people. Mm-hmm. You have to out-community them. And community means person-to-person conversations. And basically I would say whatever it costs. And the answer is, okay, well, whatever it costs, how do you pay for that? You go to the people who want us to win because they've shown they want us to win by giving, ask them for a stable amount of money that is affordable to them, and then give them people to talk to and community so that it all works out being the same. Is this dramatic departure for how we do things? Yes. Did $800 million in 7 swing states that we all lost? Does that feel good to anyone? If that feels good to you, if you think, oh, that's like, if your basic attitude is, aw shucks, we were a little close, if we just do a little better next time, we're going to win, then I'm not your candidate. But the problem is we lost 24 states by 10 points or more at the presidential level. That's 48 senators. That's a huge amount of basic political power. If we can't start winning them back, we can occasionally win elections, but we win an election. And then Joe Biden did a great job getting as much of his stuff as he could possibly get because it required the Sinema Manchin veto. And with the Sinema Manchin veto, he did phenomenally. I have no major complaints there. But that didn't seem like it was all the things we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it's also the case that that's just, you don't want to be at the whim of one or two people all the time to get half of what you want. That feels like you're not succeeding, even if you're succeeding. Anyway, I'm sure that was longer than the why am I the best.
Yeah, no, you're good. I did want to jump in though, because there's 2 points there that I wanted to I guess follow up on. The first one was kind of where you brought up Manchin and Sinema blocking the legislation, and I think that actually did kind of bring kind of a unique or interesting problem where Joe Biden legislatively was like really effective in terms of working bipartisanly, working with Republicans when he had to. I think he had like 7 bills total that he passed of like major pieces of legislation. But like, despite that, obviously there's like the on the ground feels from the pandemic, obviously is what most of this could be attributed to, or prices or wages, whatever it may be. And I think there was a bit of a disconnect between letting people realize like his legislative successes versus like what they feel. What do you think needs to change, whether it be like rhetorically in the messaging or how we're messaging to like connect with voters on that level again?
Right, absolutely. So I think the major thing to me is people will spend an incredible amount of time focusing on what the message should be. And I think that's important. I think saying the right thing is important. But if let's say if it was a song and you wanted to do a song and you work incredibly hard on your song, but then you go to play it and there's a bunch of barking dogs, or you go to play it and your speakers are terrible, or you go to play it and someone else is blasting another song louder, doesn't matter how good your song is. You can't write a song that is so good that it can be good through crappy speakers. So when I say sort of crappy speakers, the Democratic Party has leaned incredibly to, we will do good things. The media will tell people we have done good things. Then people will hear that we did good things, and everyone will be happy with us for the good things we did. But the media now, that's our set of crappy speakers, because their viewership is down, their listenership is down, their clicks are down, mainstream media, everything is down across the board. And because they're trying, because a lot of them are corporate controlled, because a lot of them are trying to play both sides, they don't think, oh, it's my job to get out. My job here is to get out your message. I want to play your song as best as I can. How do I help you play your song? It gets filtered. And again, then you don't hear the song. So we need, I'm really about, I want, good singers singing our song to you in person when you know that you're listening. And one of the ways I want that is, to some degree, is, you're humming the beats in a non-election year when guards are not up. Mm-hmm. So that then when you're humming the beats, when the non-election year, people's non-guard up, when you go into the full song, people are already like, yeah, I've heard some of this before. Because, one of the major reasons people like pop songs, horrifyingly, is they've heard it before.
On the radio, yeah.
If people hear a song, not everyone doesn't always like every song they hear, but generally speaking, if you heard a song a lot, then that is how you come to ultimately like and appreciate the song. So I'm a big speakers guy. So when you talk about the, pandemic and prices and all of that, I think that's all very important. But I also think that it's a good job. It maybe do a good job explaining how we lost by 230,000 votes. It does a good job explaining that. I don't think it does a good job explaining the overall sort of country feels. I think the problem sort of is, you really have to look at, well, what did their wallets tell you about how they felt about their economic spending? And if you look at their wallets told you they didn't feel overly negatively. Maybe they weren't, I don't mean to minimize the suffering of anyone who's struggling in society, but the sort of was the median voter economically worse off than they were when Donald Trump left office? The answer to that is no. Were they actually even economically worse off than when Donald Trump had the pre-pandemic? The answer to that objectively is, if it was minuscule. Mm-hmm. So I think that the emotions that come to play in this are a much bigger deal. One huge part of the emotions is, if a third of the country believes the election is stolen from 20, and they go on and on and on and on, those are angry, miserable people walking around. Whenever anyone says anything about Biden, they're going to be angry and miserable and terrible. And I don't have a plan for how do you get them to not think this crazy thing. But one of the issues is that if there are a bunch, if that number is not a third, but if that number is 60% in the county you live in, then it's really hard to feel good. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of one of the things, that if it doesn't feel good, then where you are, most people are not, I would like to be the beacon of being different. I live in this, a 70-30 county becomes an 80-20 county like that, because the 30 doesn't want to be the minority. They don't want to be not with the group. And sort of one of the things is like, and also it's like, really, how do you feel about the guy? And one of the things is that, a lot of people, when it came to how do you feel about Biden, and I want to be clear, this election is about Joe Biden and what happened in the first 36 months, 42 months, what Harris was able to accomplish in the last 6 months, one can nitpick, but I think if one spends their time nitpicking on what she did and what she could have done, and should have done this, she should have done that, one, it's not particularly fair to her, but two, even if it is fair to her, she lost, she deserves the blame. It doesn't teach you the lessons that we actually need to learn from this, which is, oh, like, people are not happy. Their not happiness is emotional, but it doesn't matter if they don't feel happy. It doesn't matter why they don't feel happy. They don't feel happy. Another thing I will say on the happiness front is, it is very much the case that 2/3 of counties are losing population. That's been an overwhelming trend before. It was true it's been overall, is not a new trend. But the point is, if your county is either losing population or gaining it at not a replacement level, it feels like something is wrong. Whether you're not going to articulate it as, you may not articulate it as that. You may not know why you're upset, but that's a relatively good reason to be upset. And, it is hard because a lot of the solutions to fixing that, going to shock you to learn, a great way to fix population decline is immigrants. Those people are not, it's not like, oh, good, bring me immigrants and then I'll be happy because my place is, how can I grow but also remain exactly the same? That's a very hard challenge. But you can't deny that the dying of the place, that if you're from a dying place, you're not going to feel good.
Yeah. So I guess there's one more thing I want to bounce off you about some of the things you said, and then I want to go to, I know you talked about like a 10 billion annual budget. I want to ask you about that and a couple other things. But first, I just wanted to bounce this off you because it's something I talk about on my channel. I want to get your opinion on it, and then we can move on about the messaging thing and how you talked about like wallets and people's spending didn't match up with like maybe the things they were saying. I think like what I talk about on my channel is the psychology behind that. I think a lot of what has to do with that is kind of like I think podcasting kind of downplays what it is, but I guess like what I always call is like the media apparatus that Republicans have built in like new media or social media, where if you get on X and you scroll, like on my X feed, I have to scroll through 10 posts of like pro-Trump, Republicans amazing, Democrats bad, before I get to any Democratic posting influencer. You go on YouTube, there's like the Daily Wire's like the biggest, there's like the Dave Rubins, like all these people are right-leaning. You don't really have that on the left. How much do you think, in terms of people's words not matching their reality, how much do you think it has to do with not just one person? Because I don't think, like you said, I don't think the left getting a Joe Rogan solves this issue, but how much do you think it has to be with what the misinformation that Republicans are pushing? They're constantly beating them over the head with that. And then we don't really have the means to connect with the voters at the same level, I think.
Right. So I'm very much of the thing that's why I want all those humans, because I think you need those humans to counteract that. Mm-hmm. One of the serious problems is first of all, now with X, the algorithm is cheating. Yeah. So it's not like, oh, well, if we just like started posting more, that like they're straight up cheating. So if the algorithm is literally cheating you, basically, kind of don't feed the beast. My campaign is on Blue Sky and Insta and Facebook, and but we're not on X. Yeah. I understand it's potentially a dangerous choice because a lot of journalists still are on X, and you might get some engagement there. But I'm basically when they're literally rigging it against you, participating in it does not like help you fight back. But to answer for the other things, one of the huge Democratic versus Republican problems is it's much easier to build a large audience when your voters are somewhat, though not entirely, homogeneous. They want to hear the same things. The core, when you look at, okay, the kinds of people who vote for Democrats at about 80%, the kinds of people who vote for Republicans at 80% are white evangelical Christians and really, and super bros.
Yeah.
And so you have some media for white evangelical Christians and you have some media for super bros. And then you've kind of covered a lot. You're almost at a huge portion of the, groups that vote for Republicans at 80%. For groups that vote for Democrats at 80%, your seculars, your, African American women, all sorts of other down, mostly LGBTQ plus people, someone whose content would like make them, someone whose content for those groups of people, it's very hard to be, I'm going to be huge amongst all of them because their media consumption habits are not the same in any way, shape, or form. The idea that you're going to have a podcaster who's gets to be that big is really hard, even if they were as great at, it's, so you need to build everything differently. But I do think it is absolutely the case that, an area where Democrats, I think, are still crushing Republicans is, on Substacks.
Yeah.
But those are like, Democrats just now read more. And
Link to my Substack in the description.
Yes.
But no, go on.
What I'm saying is that, Democrats just read more. And the way you know that is that you ask questions about, is inflation up or down?
Yeah.
And they ask people, is inflation up or down? And if you said that it was down, they asked them a bevy of like literal answer the questions correctly. People who answered the questions correctly voted for Harris 70-30.
Yep.
People who didn't can't, so I think that one of the things is that, a lot of times is spent now on competing against each other.
Yeah.
So your job as a podcaster is to figure out, how am I going to build my audience? How am I going to build my audience so that if I build my audience, I can make a go of this as a going concern, then I need to grow it. And one of the things is that, once you're on the, if you're on the Daily Wire, you're done. You're like,
yeah,
they'll grow your audience for you. You're done.
See, I agree with exactly what you're saying. I think what we need kind of is like one person who like understands, maybe they're like the big, I don't know, David Pakman's like a big name, but like just like somebody who understands how to grow this and like the infrastructure it takes to kind of like, I know like, I mean, I don't know the inner workings of like campaigns exactly, but I know there's always like a communications guy, like there should like, they need like new media communications, like somebody specifically for communications, but like on the social media level is what I think.
One of the things is that I want campaigns to go on more things.
Yeah.
But I actually don't really, I don't see that as massively being a campaign function. I think that has to be a party function so that it's constant, because a huge thing is if you're running for Congress and you build a great relationship with you and you build a big relationship with all the podcasters and then you lose and you're done, then all that work, it doesn't all go entirely in the trash, but 80% of it goes in the trash. The voices of here is, I think there's fear. Well, if we elevate these voices and then they say stuff that is not great, then, how you make it so that the Democratic Party both secret funds, but doesn't automatically get tagged with every, because we wouldn't want to get tagged with everything Ben Shapiro said. If from the alternative view, you might not want to be, I don't know if I want to get tagged with everything you say. You seem like a nice chap, so I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah.
But finding a way to create the infrastructure whereby, like, if you are one of the people who wants to be a part of this, you're someone who becomes a recurring donor to the party, here's an email with the links to the 100 podcasters, see which ones you like.
Yeah.
And just, it has to be within some, some standards. We don't want, if you constantly say that, isn't it great that Luigi is awesome and we're going to like, you can't really be sending, I don't want to ban speech, but you can't be promoting,
Yeah, no.
go kill,
Optics.
go kill a CEO is probably not a message that you want in the Democratic podcasting family, but you need to push the envelope a little bit because we live in a place where, the other side is completely unafraid to offend anyone.
Mhm.
We're completely afraid to offend anyone. And therefore we end up saying nothing. You cannot really be interesting and never offend anyone. You can try, but
Yeah.
it's the level of difficulty that it would take to be both interesting and never say anything that would make anyone mad. I mean, they may or may not cancel on me, but next Sunday I'm supposed to be on Destiny. This Sunday I'm supposed to be on Destiny. Well, he's envelope pushing a lot. So a lot of people will be like, oh, but I don't, and I'm not even sure he's interesting. He's new to me. I'll find out.
He's hit or miss.
But but regardless, the point is to my mind, it's really, really hard to be interesting, but never say anything that might offend anyone.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go towards, well, we'd rather not offend, one of the old sort of, in the end, it didn't work. We weren't able to cut through this cycle. But the thing that bothered me in 2016 that I always cling to as Hillary Clinton should have been for the legalization of marijuana, and Hillary Clinton should have leveraged that against Trump to get back sort of the polling was already there. It wins on all the ballot. It won in Colorado by enough. It won in all the things enough. For the Bernie people, just like a really simple, Trump wants to jail you. She doesn't. I'm not saying it fixes everything, but again, when you lose by 77,000 votes, how many things did you need to fix? Sort of the overall caution. I think that Harris came to that point. Biden never did because of generationally, but Democrats are for legalizing marijuana and Republicans are not. Yes, there are some small number of moms who may think that that's too far. I don't think that they think it's too far that they're willing to vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So and maybe that, I'm not saying as chair, I want, not putting a green flag at the DNC, a weed flag at the Democratic Party, but just that's a sort of fear of controversy that we have that has opportunities.
I write about that, or talking about Substacks. I write about the Democrats putting their own foot in their mouth sometimes for fear of I feel like backlash or being labeled as radical for things that I long have been common sense. And I think that, or I guess normalized, I wouldn't say common sense, but legalizing marijuana, I feel like it's been 12, 13, 14 years since that was a radical position or whatnot. But I did want to ask you, because I did on your website, I saw that $10 billion annual budget, really important. You stated, tell us why it's important and how do we get there?
So first of all, I want to be clear because particularly since I'm sending this to DNC members, probably when I say a $10 billion budget, I do not mean $10 billion to the Democratic National Committee.
Yeah.
I mean $10 billion across the entire ecosystem. And sort of the two big things I really want to fund, the 10,000 organizers at $100,000 a year. That's not salary, that's salary plus benefits. So the salary may work out to 75. It may be that, if, it's cost of living adjusted. So if you are in rural Iowa, you may get 80 because your housing costs a fifth of what, not a fifth, but, a third or a half of what it does in, greater Boston, et cetera, et cetera. But broad strokes, 10,000 at 100,000 a piece is $1 billion a year. So that's a piece of what I want to spend. The other thing is, I think that the 1,000,000 people who are talking to the 200 voters, they need $10, they need $100 a month. Not so much because if they get the money, they're going to like that the money is overwhelmingly important. Someone doesn't work really hard for $1,200. Some people might if but generally speaking, you're not going to put it, that probably is going to work out to like $10 an hour at most. It's not about the money. But if you give say someone feels it's a job and pay them, one, you're mostly reimbursing them for like the gas and the thing and the this, but also you're saying this is important and we think this is important enough that we're going to pay for it. Those two things together, that becomes 1.2 billion. That's 2.2 billion that I want to spend that exists sort of where I think the other sort of, what ultimately happens with the other, rest of it. One thing I think in some places in the particularly important elections, I have seen it is the case where in this New Hampshire in 16, you ended up getting to a point where they were spending like $100 a voter. But even at $100 a voter, that's kind of a misnomer because such a number of voter are going to vote for the Democrat no matter what, and such a number of people are going to vote for the Republican no matter what. The swing vote that's actually available, we're talking like $700 a voter. What do we do with that $700 a voter? We ran television ads and sent direct mail and flooded the zone with nonsense. I believe that the voter would rather have that money personally. Now, you can't just be like, give me money and vote for me. But it is very clear, but Musk came close to trying that. I don't love it as a tactic, but he came close to trying that. And one of the things that, when people want to sell timeshares, they bribe you to come, whether it's steak or tickets to Disney. It's a well-known sales tactic. Having someone, listen to our message for 2 hours where uninterrupted the song comes in like a bell is very expensive, but it might, at the cost that we're paying per vote now, it's kind of in that range. It's complicated. I don't have like that one. I don't have exactly how I'm going to set it up yet. I want to be clear. I think that you need to think about it. Getting it so that it's both legal and productive is really important. But the bottom line is that's a cost driver. And you still have, I'm not going to say, oh, well, we're doing no more TV. TV's over. No, you have to get to name, rec, saturation in TV, and you have to reinforce your messaging on TV. If I want a podcast network, if I want a Substack, all of these things cost. So if all of these things cost, that's where I put that sort of $10 billion figure. If it turns out that you can do everything I want to do for $5 billion a year, and you don't need the kicker for the presidential year because you did such a good job, I'm not like, well, the money is the money's immaterial to me. It's doing all the things that I think that are effective and not ever hearing we can't do that because of cost. And I want to be clear that we should never hear we can't do that because of cost, because everybody says, oh, the presidential election, oh, politics is so expensive. Oh, politics is so expensive. The Democratic side together federally spent $6.7 billion this cycle. If you win the White House, at a minimum, you can decide how $300 billion is spent per year. So a 4-year presidential term is worth at least $1 trillion. And I believe that actually, if you actually did all the math on all the stuff and all the regulations and all the things, you are talking that having the White House for 4 years might be worth $1 trillion a year or $4 trillion. If it's worth $4 trillion, $6.7 billion is nothing. If this was a venture capitalist takeover, no one would even think about spending the paltry sums. Why do we spend the paltry sums? Because what we're doing primarily is promising we're going to run $800 million of ads in 7 states. If you're promising to run $800 million of ads in 7 states, it turns out that people are not super excited to pay to make that $1.6 billion in ads in 7 states, because I'm telling you right now, if Harris had spent double her ad buy, it would have changed the outcome not at all. And so I don't want to so basically I come up with a big number because I don't want to hear we can't afford to do it. How do you get all of that money? There are 15 million people with credit cards saved on ActBlue. If if you get, if you get $10 a month out of them, that's that's 1.5 billion. If you can get the average up to like $50 a month out of them, then it is then you're close to my goal. That's a high number. I completely understand. And a lot of people, I'm not saying, but some of the people who we're talking about, the sort of the Democratic billionaire class that does give to us, they are, they're doing $1 million like it's water. Maybe they need to do 5 because, and basically, the thing that is really sad to me is like with Bill Gates. Bill Gates gave one of our super PACs $50 million. He decided that he didn't really want that to become public, but then it did, and he got stuck. What that means, but basically, Bill Gates used his money to do this, but not his brain. He outsourced his brain power to whichever other, to the same consulting classes that have done everything. The number of people who, spent a reasonable amount of money on this election effort, but did not use their brains to figure out how this stuff would actually work, is how you end up with being all of those TV ads as a thing. So if you get everybody to do what they can and what they want to do behind, now while you're giving your $10 a month, there's an organizer who will there's a human who will take your call, and, the number of things that you could do at a social level, I want to subsidize social sports for Democrats. I want to do, that's my generation. Maybe it's hot yoga. Maybe it's knitting circles. Maybe it's all these communitarian things that will make people happier doing them, getting the Democratic billionaire class to understand they have to subsidize that, combined with getting the buy-in from people that, I'll chip in my $10 a month. Costco, and this is not America, but I looked it up. Costco writ large takes in $4.5 billion just in membership fees. So you can't tell me that, it's impossible to get $10 billion. If you can join Costco, you can afford democracy. Now, a lot of people save money on it and they like it, but it's okay. But they like it because they get the free hot dogs. There's not free, but you get a $1.50 hot dog. There's no reason the Democratic Party can't have loss leader hot dogs. Yeah. I mean, we can have loss leader hot dogs. That's not outside the realm. For rural areas, the one thing I really want to do again is, okay, well, what's the small business that you don't have? And then we'll open it and we'll run it, and we'll run it at, near, we're not going to open where to put someone out of business, but what's the one you don't have? In a rural area, we're going to open up the small business you don't have. We're going to run it at a loss, but not a huge loss. But then there's a hub of activity, and the person who runs that might end up being a great city council candidate or a great whatever. But the point is that I really the $10 billion for me is about, I don't want to hear we can't afford an idea. And I think that there are enough people who, if it starts not being miserable, will want to be more involved. But if what the Democratic Party is to a lot of people is text messages and emails begging for money, to the extent that The Simpsons did a joke on their Halloween special where the blue monster was going to smush a gun manufacturer, but instead of smushing it, it sent a text message asking you to give to the Nevada Senate race. When it's become so socially ubiquitous that The Simpsons is making fun of it, that's the problem. And to everyone who's listening, that is how we are seen. We may be doing lots of great stuff that you're all really proud of, and I'm not trying to take away from you being proud of the stuff that you do. But to an ordinary person who wants to be involved with us, we're seen as annoying text messages and emails and a constant give me money or we're all going to die. And in some cases, that some of the email texts are so bad that they're promising that we're going to have, if you give us $5, we're getting 4 new Supreme Court justices after the election, not before the election. After the election, they're promising 4 new Supreme Court justices if you give to us. That's just lying. And one of the things is, to me, the way the fundraising system works is the boy who cried wolf. But one of the problems is it's the boy who cried wolf, but ultimately someone always comes when you cry wolf. So lots of people hate you, think you're a jerk, don't want anything to do with you, but so long as somebody comes when you cry wolf, you're like, well, somebody came when I cried wolf, let's keep crying wolf. But that is a model for getting some money and some resources to do some stuff. That is not a model for this is a thing that makes me feel good. Mm-hmm. And, more than anything else that I would say to Democrats is Democrats have to make people feel good again. I'm not sorry. I know that I did it again thing. I don't want a Trumpian style slogan, but I'm just saying that, politics needs to be fun. Politics needs to make people feel good. And none of the things that we're currently doing, even if they're necessary, they don't feel good.
Yeah. We've talked about, I guess, a lot of what has to do with campaigning. We talked about fundraising, about messaging. To kind of just sum it up one last time, all in one place. And because obviously after an election where you lose, the word that gets floated around is change, and what's going to change, what's going to be different. So could you just, I guess, one last time for us detail if you're the chair of the DNC, how do Democratic campaigns look? What change do you bring? What do you represent as the chair?
The bottom line is that for me, if I'm elected chair, and I'm a long shot, I'm being honest with everybody, mm-hmm. But if I'm elected chair, the key thing that I would say is it has to be about people first, because actual human connection is how all of the noise and all of the things that we lose is broken. And to some degree, society is pushing against human connection, and so because society is pushing against human connection, we have to push even harder on human connection, because if you want to tell people that things can get better and people helping people is the right thing to do, you can't just say it. You can't just do it with government. You have to do it with how you behave and how you act and how you are all the time. And so what that means is sustainable over urgency fundraising. That is, 10,000 people. I want to be clear that when you hire them, they're from the places that they live. The goal here is not, if you did 10,000 organizers and you hired them from elite colleges like Teach for America, plop them in somewhere they've never been for 2 years, and then circled them around, that would be better than nothing, but it would be nowhere near better than nothing than, oh, I'm from here. I can get a job as an organizer here where I live, where I'm from, and teaching everyone all the, I think one of the things is that Democratic operatives think that a lot of the stuff they do is mystifying, and only those who grew up in it know how to do it. And you don't know what the number of acronyms that you don't know that people might want you to teach you. Well, if you didn't learn them and if you weren't part of it, then get out of here. You can teach that stuff is much easier to teach. Teaching someone, and I'm gonna dig on my friend a little bit. I love you. If you listen to this, don't think I don't love you. But I had a friend from the Upper East Side of New York in 2008. She ended up as an Obama organizer in Raymond, New Hampshire. That was the Obama year. Everything was going great. So it didn't matter. But this is a woman who never knew how to drive before she got a job working in rural New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And she's a genius and she does civic engagement and I love her to death. But is she the perfect person to organize Raymond, New Hampshire, no,
Yeah.
because like it's culturally different. And so it's much easier to teach people all the political things than it is to teach them to like be where they're from. So I hate the roving staffer model. We need to get rid of the roving staffer model. Too many Democratic campaigns. What you do is year to year, you go from, well, I need a job on this cycle, so I'm going to get a job here, and then I get a job there. And then you do that for 2 or 3 cycles. Then you decide you want to grow up and get married. You get your forever job working for the government or a nonprofit. Or, then you go into corporate America and you think fondly of that time when you ate ramen on the couch in Dubuque. But that model of thinking fondly of that time when you ate ramen on the couch in Dubuque, there's someone from Dubuque who would have done that job better. And, one thing I really want to be very certain is, as a result of all of my programs, every single person in America needs to know a person who is a Democrat who they like. And the number of places where you literally go in and I don't know a single Democrat who I like, I've never met them. All the Democratic Party is what Fox News tells me on TV. And even the Democrats who are there, you stop liking them because it's only the kind of, the people who have the fortitude to live in an 80-20 county against them are great people. But there's ways in which their willingness,
I live in the heart of Indiana, my friend.
right. What I'm saying is, the point is you're wonderful and sturdy and we love you.
Yes.
But to some degree, the people who are not, for whom, like, the people who usually do better are the people who actually do give in to peer pressure. One of the things I always said is the party that wins is the party that gets the ambitious and the unprincipled. Mm-hmm. It's horrible. I don't want politics to be that way, but a lot of times that's what wins. And so the point is that, you have to offer the ambitious, unprincipled people, one, you teach them principles over time, and 2, you offer them something that makes it worth their while. And so that's why that's why you need to know a Democrat that you like. And to some degree, maybe you find out that you like them before you find out they're a Democrat. So, but that requires the sort of long-term planning that doesn't come with building it up, tearing it down, building it up, tearing it down. You say Indiana, but like in 2008, we won Indiana. And then in 2012, we lost it by 10. Yeah. And then off the cliff.
If you come here now, you couldn't imagine Indiana going blue. Like, just the feel of living here and talking to people, I couldn't imagine Indiana going blue anytime soon.
No, and I'm not saying it's.
I'm just saying like that's like I'm just to the point you're trying to make. Yeah. No, you can go ahead.
Well, that was what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is that we won presidential in Indiana in 2008. We won a Senate in 2012, and now we're target practice.
Yep.
And so how do we get, and it also in 4, you never would have believed in 8 that we could win Indiana. The factors that went into that were massive. So I'm not it's not, just elect me and in 28 we're winning Indiana. But I'm just saying is that, like,
you heard it here first.
Yes. All 50 states. If I give one of my promises, you elect me chair, we're winning all 50 states in the 2028 election. Clean sweep. Utah, no problem. Idaho, no problem. All taken care of. But in all seriousness, once you have no hope, once you have the feeling of no hope to win, it becomes really hard to want to try. And one of the things is that, one of my, other candidates in this race is like, we need to run everyone in every race. A fact that I agree with, but it's also really important to realize that in places where winning is exceptionally to almost impossibly difficult in the next, the Democrat running for the at-large Wyoming seat in 2026 is not going to win the Wyoming at-large seat. I'm sorry if I would love to be wrong, but if you are in a situation where you're running for things the first time that you run for something to make a change and make a difference, and you get this energy of like, I'm doing this thing, it's really exciting. But then you get the really bad results. And then you do it again and you get a really bad result. And then you do it again. And at some point, it's like, why am I doing this anymore? It's never going to make a difference. So you need things that can be wins in those places that are not based entirely on electoral performance, because, you know, this should have been 70-30, but it was 66-34 is really exciting the first time. It's not exciting the second time. And by the third time, you don't want to, I swear, if you give me money, I can get us to 37, I promise. At some point, it's hard, you need wins outside of elections while also running everyone in elections. And those organizers who have their jobs full time, sometimes, maybe you move them off and make them candidates because they've been doing that. And then you put them, and when they leave being an organizer, then they're a candidate, and then they go back to being an organizer, so that you're not so disruptive of all the lives. And so, thinking about this from why would I want to be a candidate perspective rather than we need candidates because it's for the greater good. It's voluntary. It's awesome. It feels good. Wanting to feel good. Feeling good can take you a cycle or two. For sustained change, you need sustained backup. And that means sustained resources no matter what happens. So.
Well, again, I want to thank you for taking the time to share your goals and ambitions for the party with us, just taking the time to speak with us in general. And I wish you the best of luck in your campaign.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to shout out your website for the people,
yes,
I will have that in the description.
Yes, I do. Well, so far, I've not decided to raise any money for this. That may be a mistake, but good news is so far it's just me and calling people. But website is Paul for DNC, and you can read all about the $10 billion and all about empathy and all about stopping the texts and all of that fun stuff on there. More will be coming. If you have ideas of what you think the Democratic Party should do, there's a forum to put that in. Unlike a lot of the other people, there is no doubt I will read every single thing I get, and I will respond to every single thing I get. So if you do not, I feel one of the huge things is I don't think the party does that very well. I think a lot of times you can write something into the oblivion. I've written too many things into the oblivion. You will not be oblivioned if you write into me.
To your credit, you were the last. I reached out to all the candidates. Because I just had a list. Like, there's no offense to you. I didn't I'm gonna ask him last. I just had a list of the names, and you were one of the last 3 or 4 names that I think I reached out to, and you were the first one to get back to me. So props to that.
Well, no, I mean, it's just a very important, like, it's, it's really, the internet world is really hard to be totally responsive in all the time because you get so much stuff. But, I'm running a comparatively small race. I don't want to denigrate my opponents. They're running big races. Their inbox are bigger. It's harder for them. But one of the whole things is just at the party level, there needs to be staff that actually responds to everyone who writes in. And I know sometimes it's like, well, we really disagree on this as a policy matter. We're not going to be able to fix that. So no, we can't change the Democratic Party's vision on this issue because you wrote me, but you still need, if you think that you can make change, the worst thing that can happen is if the people who might make that change for you don't even bother to respond to you, because guess what? Then you think, well, I can't make change. I want everyone who listens, I want everyone in the entire Democratic Party family to understand that together we can make change and we have to.
I completely agree. And yeah, so anyone that wants to check that out, his website link will be the first one in the description. Again, thanks for speaking with us. And maybe we'll have you back on as the race picks up. Who knows? But
yeah, I will be able to. One, I want to come back while the race picks up. But what I definitely want to do is come back when the race is over, because I want to go over sort of what I think of who won and how we can get them to be better. If it's me, then I'll definitely come back and victory party. And, I don't have a plan for that yet, but if it's not me, I think it's really important for sort of listeners who care about that stuff to not feel like, oh, well, I heard that really cool guy who had the podcast ideas, he didn't win. So then whatever happened with that, I guess we're going to do none of it. Another disappointment. I don't want to be another disappointment. So I really want to come back after the race is over. If it makes sense to come back while the race is happening, that makes sense. The election's on the 30th. So it's like the first, so it's lickety split of February.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back on. So
okay, great.
And I guess.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And enjoy the rest of your day, my friend.
You as well.